2025 is here, and now more than ever, it is important to be extremely conscious with your money and create a financial plan. Build an emergency fund and make sure your financial bases are covered. Because a lot has happened in the past few years and we're headed to a lot of change in 2025, and I think that going forward, there are two paths that you could take. The first path is an unintentional path where you feel powerless, don't take any personal action, and accept whatever comes to you. The second path is an intentional path where you choose to take control over your life, come up with a plan, and adopt a more frugal way of life. And I think that if you want to survive this changing world and have a prosperous 2025, you need to take this second path of living an intentional life. And in this video, I want to talk about all this change that we are headed towards and things that have been building up in the last few years that show how important it is to be intentional as you enter 2025, and share 6 reasons on why you need to be more intentional with money. And hopefully it inspires you to live a more frugal, intentional life in 2025. And the first reason is a new presidency. Now, in case you have been living under a rock, here in the United States, we have a new president, and it is indeed this man. What a guy. But love it or hate it, whatever your opinion on him is, he is going to be our next president for the next 4 years. And a new president means a lot of change. I mean, especially in the first few weeks, we're going to see hundreds of executive orders, reversals of previous administration policies, many big statements made, a change in national rhetoric, changes in international affairs, and many more changes. And markets and businesses will react to all of this. And who knows how all this stuff will impact us working class people in our day-to-day lives. If you're a supporter of him, you'll probably think that good days are ahead and we're going to be in a good situation. If you're in opposition to him, you'll probably think that bad days are ahead and we're screwed. But regardless of however you feel, one thing will remain true, and that is personal finance is and will always be personal. We often act as if politicians are going to solve all of our problems and our financial fate lies in their hands. But the truth is, you're the one that has the biggest influence over your finances. And if you choose to live an intentional life and take the steps to budget, build an emergency fund, and live below your means, you'll be fine regardless of whoever's in office. But if you live an unintentional life and think someone else will solve your problems, you'll probably stay behind, regardless of how good or bad they do. I mean, this might be a controversial statement, but I do not think that Donald Trump is going to personally sit you down to create your own budget and make sure that you are living below your means. No, you gotta do that. Personal finance is personal, and regardless of how these next 4 years play out, you ultimately have the biggest influence over your personal finance situation. And if you choose to live an intentional life, you'll probably be fine regardless of whatever happens. The second reason is the wild bull stock market. So if you are an investor, you know that over the past few years, the stock market has increased a lot. I mean, last year, it increased by 25%. In 2023, it increased 26%. And although 2022 was negative, the 3 previous years also had high returns. For a while now, the stock market has been on this wild bull run, which is great. I mean, I've been making a lot of money, but it's naive to think that the stock market only goes up. No, even in this wild bull stock market, there is the possibility that it will go down and you will lose a huge chunk of your investment portfolio. And what's going to determine how will it impact you is your planning beforehand. If you're intentional, plan beforehand and build an emergency fund. You won't be forced to take out investments and won't lose anything. But if you live an unintentional life, don't plan, and don't have an emergency fund, you could be forced to take out investments at a loss. Nobody can predict what the stock market will do, even if you are confident that the next 4 years will be great. It's still important to take the steps to plan because nobody can predict the future. Not me, not Hermione, not Trump.
He's going to sacrifice himself. No, you can't! There must be another way!
And if you want to survive whatever the stock market has in store the next few years, you have to 1, be intentional and have an emergency fund so you don't have to withdraw, and 2, as Warren Buffett says, believe that America will always overcome and hold in tough times. The stock market has been doing so great these last few years that it almost seems like we are overdue for a downturn. However, nobody knows. But regardless of whatever the future has in store, if you live an intentional life and have that emergency fund so you don't have to withdraw your investments, you will be fine regardless of however the stock market performs. The third reason is crazy natural disasters. Another reason why it's so important to live an intentional life in today's world is because the weather has been crazier than ever, and it can completely change your life overnight. I mean, this past year, we have seen many people displaced in Hurricane Helene that hit the southern US and the wildfires impacting California these past few weeks. We often think that these natural events that completely change people's lives only happen to others and not us, but the truth is they can happen to you too. I mean, in September, I was flooded out of my previous apartment due to Hurricane Helene and had my life in limbo for a month and a half. Your life can change completely overnight by something that is completely out of your control, like it did with mine in September when I was flooded out of my apartment in Hurricane Helene. And one big lesson I learned when my life was uprooted for that month and a half was the importance of an emergency fund. Having an emergency fund made the transition easier, as I had the money to pay for all the expenses. But if I didn't have an emergency fund, the event would have impacted me a lot more and caused problems. You can never predict when your life will completely change due to a natural disaster, and hopefully it never happens to you. But during the last few years, we have been seeing more and more stories of crazy natural events. And so it's becoming more and more important to live an intentional life and create that financial safety net. So in case something does happen and a natural event uproots your life, you have the financial means to protect you. The fourth reason is a highly competitive job market. Another reason why it is so important to be intentional in today's world and get your personal finances under control is because of the tough job market that we are in right now. I mean, if you are unemployed and looking for a good job with good benefits and good pay, it could take months or even years to find one because you're competing against hundreds of candidates nowadays. I mean, I have a friend who recently got a job last week after looking for 2 years. And sure, he could have gotten a job quicker, but he wanted a good job in the field that he wanted to grow in. And nowadays, in the tough job market, the key to getting a good job and making it through the process is creating a strong financial safety net in case you need to wait out to get the good job. Otherwise, if you don't have that safety net, you might be forced to take a job with less pay and benefits out of desperation. The job market is cutthroat nowadays, and regardless of who you are and how good you are, finding a good job is going to take some time. And so now more than ever in this competitive market, it is so important to be intentional with your money, create that financial safety net, and live below your means so you are not forced to make a decision out of desperation. Now, the fifth reason is an increasingly expensive world. Over the last few years, we have seen prices rise due to inflation. I mean, in the last 3 years, inflation has been very high, and recently it cooled down to 2.9%. Since COVID happened in 2020, life has really changed and gotten a lot more expensive. I mean, a meal at a restaurant nowadays is going to cost you about $20. A small trip to the grocery store will probably be over $100, and housing is becoming increasingly unaffordable. Life has gotten more and more expensive, and although inflation has been cooling down, prices are still much higher than they were in the pre-pandemic world. Which makes it so important to budget, live below your means, and be more conscious with your spending. A lot has happened in the past few years, and maybe in the past you could have gotten by living unintentionally. But in today's expensive world, you must live intentionally because the price of things is going to keep increasing and wages might not always keep up with that. Now, the final reason is the unpredictable, fast-changing world. When you look at the past 5 years, we have been through so much. 5 years ago, I was living a simple life teaching English in Ecuador. And since then, we have had COVID, tech becoming more part of our lives, multiple world conflicts, multiple natural disasters, huge economic shifts, cultural shifts, and who knows what crazy things will continue to happen in the next few years. The world is wild, it's fast changing, and it is 100% unpredictable. And if you want to survive this crazy world that we live in where it is hard to get by on a smile, you can't live your life in an unintentional way and just take whatever comes to you. But you must choose to live your life in an intentional way and take the steps to take control over your finances and be financially prepared for whatever might come. It is the only way to survive this wild, crazy world where it's hard to get by just upon a smile, girl. And those are the 6 reasons why it is so important to live an intentional, frugal life in 2025. It is the only way to survive. And with that, muchas gracias, que tenga un buen día, nos vemos, chicos.